Well, it sure has been a week, hasn't it, Canada? On Wednesday, we got Mark Carney delivering a national address to students, telling them they have to sacrifice more than they already have in the upcoming budget. And then yesterday, we get Doug Ford releasing ads in the United States with Ronald Reagan in them that pissed off Donald Trump, all while Mark Carney watched on and did absolutely nothing. We are political roadkill. We are globalist roadkill. And today we're going to expose how Mark Carney and his liberal aligned team, in tandem with Dougie Ford and his provincial clique, are orchestrating a strategy that seems to be plunging Canada into not only economic peril, but reputational collapse around the world and a trade relationship with our southern neighbor and former best friends that is unraveling at record speeds before our eyes. Let's be really clear here. The catalyst, as Mark Carney likes to say, is Doug Ford. But Mark did nothing about it. This is not a minor misstep. This is a full-blown strategic blunder by a governing class that thinks it can play globalist power games while simultaneously neglecting Canada's foundational interests. And the consequences, well, we might be sitting with consequences right now that could be irreversible. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the weekend wrap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join our conversation about this. Well, let's lay out the economic damage being done here to start this show. And it's really not theoretical anymore, is it? Carney, whose background is not in grassroots commerce but in global financial institutions, has declared that Canada needs to double its non-US exports over the next decade because our historic reliance on the United States has turned into what he would call a vulnerability. The only vulnerability we have in this country is our prime minister. It is our liberal government. It is Doug Ford. And just newsflash for you there, Dougie. If you don't think Mark Carney's using you as a shield right now, you really haven't been paying attention. All of these admissions alone should set off alarms. If your prime minister is saying the relationship that has underpinned 75% of Canadian exports is now a weak link, you're already on shaky ground. Meanwhile, the U.S. has reimposed or threatened to add to heavy tariffs on Canadian goods, including steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. All of these are staples of our industrial backbone in this country. But they've done it because they're angry, and they've cut off all trade negotiations now because of Doug Ford's decision, asininely, to put out these commercials. Carney's response? A flurry of announcements of renegotiation with Asia, diversification and global partnerships, going where the puck is. But the execution has been weak, tardy, and reactive as always. And that means Canadian firms are holding back investments, Canadian workers are watching uncertainty grow in this country, and Canada's economy is floating in absolute limbo. When I say that Doug Ford is the shield for Mark Carney, Mark almost encourages this behavior to take the attention negatively off of him, and Doug doesn't even realize it. And then there's the episode of the digital services tax when we go back in time a little bit, where Canada introduced this on U.S. tech firms, only to scrap it when Washington threatened trade talks. In effect, Carney's government caved before securing favorable terms, and in doing so, broadcasted our weakness as a country around the world. This sends a message that Canada under Carney will reverse course at the first sign of U.S. pressure. The problem this time is they already released these commercials. Anyway, that kind of signal is poison in international commerce and diplomacy, so we've sent our weakness signal already. And then we did this. We acted like a screaming, kicking 8-year-old child and sent a commercial into another country. Turn to Ontario. That's where we have to look for that one, where Doug Ford played what can only be described as a political stunt that is now having real-world trade war consequences. Ontario's government spent an estimated $75 million to run that anti-tariff ad in the United States, featuring illegally the voice of Ronald Reagan, aimed at Republican districts to blast the message that tariffs, my friends, are bad. We're going to send that into another country's ecosphere of politics. Brilliant. This is taxpayer money used not to build our economy, but to wage a propaganda war in another country. We invaded the US with media. That's what he did. Do you think that's going to go over well? Do you see the sheer hubris here? North America's interlinked supply chains, our largest export market right next door, and Ontario chooses to outwardly antagonize the US electorate, not just the president, the electorate. And guess what? The US president responds by terminating all trade negotiations with Canada. All in one day, all within 24 hours. That's not oversight. That's strategic suicide. And Mark Carney saw it all coming. He stood behind Doug Ford the day those things were released. Didn't stop him, did he? We talked about that yesterday. And yet, Carney, he just stands by, lets this happen. If you don't think you're the shield, Ford, you are. You repost Reagan speeches in defiance, and Canada's prime minister just watches on. That's not subtle using you as a shield. It's right in your face. It is a self inflicted wound. The next time you hear about trade disputes, you must remember part of this mess was manufactured by Ottawa and Toronto, not just by Washington. It might have started with 51st state talks last year at around this time, but boy oh boy is it ending with absolute embarrassment on our end. Trade is one thing, reputation around the world is another, and Canada is bleeding both. Carney's own declaration that the old relationship with the United States is over might have actually been caused by him all along. That Canada must chart a new path because our traditional partner is no longer reliable. Well, that shouldn't be bombast, it should be alarm. We should be alarmed by that because it's him causing it. And his bestie for whiskey, Doug Ford. Because when you tell your largest customer and partner that you're moving on, you aren't sending a message of strength. You're signaling fragility. You're signaling a tantrum. And that's what this Trump derangement syndrome has been all about for the last 7 or 8 months. That perception abroad has effects. U.S. senators and diplomats are warning Canada, de-escalate the trade conflict before you box yourself in and have no trade at all. Senate Finance Committee, global supply chains, all of these things notice. Investors notice. Why do you think they're all leaving Canada and no new ones are coming back? Our allies notice. They're barely talking to us. And our adversaries, they sit back and they rip us off. China's about to do the same thing. When an advertising campaign launched by a provincial government becomes a reason for the U.S. president to halt trade talks, that is a reputational failure of absolute magnitude. Canada is now being treated not as a reliable partner, but as a political irritant. We're in the hair of people around the world, countries around the world. Much of this rests on Carney and his team's failure to manage not just policy, but optics and diplomacy. And our mainstream media still won't report it, although they're having a hard time now covering all this up. Here's the core issue. Carney and his caucus speak the language of globalism, diversification, supply chain transformation, new world partnerships, but their actions reveal a lot of other things. They tolerate stunts like Ford's ad war to make him the shield, to get the pressure off of them. Then they backpedaled on taxes when pressured. They declare that a new relationship with the U.S. is needed after our industries are already being hammered, start to work on that, and then allow this to happen. The result is that Canada stands between two different worlds. Too dependent on the U.S. to decouple, too arrogant to behave like a steady partner. Ford's role in all of this just underscores this whole thing we've been just talking about. Instead of aligning Ontario's interests around strengthening exports, he picks a fight with the U.S. electorate and the president. His response to Trump's tariff threats is emotional, like a family member stabbing you in the heart on Thanksgiving Day. But trade isn't about family, and it isn't about family feuds, unless you're talking world family. But otherwise, it's about contracts, credibility, continuity. And when you treat it like a vendetta, you destroy your own capacity to bargain ever again. Carney should have been the adult at the table. He had the chance yesterday, 2 days ago, actually, when he met with Doug Ford about the nuclear plants. He should have said, no, we will not spend millions on aggressive U.S. ads. Instead, we'll sit down and we'll continue these negotiations. We're getting closer sectorally and make sure Canadians export, jobs are secured, tariffs are removed. But instead, he let this all play out. He just let it. That's not leadership. It's total and utter negligence. Even if you say he didn't know about it, that's negligence. He should always know about it. And now we arrive at perhaps the most frightening point. Some of this damage may be irreversible now. When investment delays become years of lost growth, when global supply chain partners look elsewhere because Canada oscillates between friend and provocateur, when U.S. administrators believe you're not serious in any negotiations and instead of trade offers you get taunts, this is a structural shift, not a temporary bump. Would you return to the table knowing there could be another commercial around the corner, staring you down, ready to try and take you down in your own country? No, Carney himself acknowledged Canada must take care of ourselves because we can't rely on the foreign partner. But when he did that, he allowed these videos to be released. But the fact he's saying it now is admission enough that prior groundwork was inadequate. They didn't do any. The plan to diversify exports is actually years away. Meanwhile, the tariffs and reputational damage with our current biggest partner is here today. Many Canadian companies don't have the luxury of waiting for diversification dreams. They require certainty and trade now. And Ford's ad campaign? A misadventure that may remove any remaining goodwill we had in Washington. In trade talks, goodwill is not a sentimental extra. It's a commodity. He destroyed some of ours. And this whole situation just proves our provincial premiers have too much power in terms of international trade. If Canada exports fall, investment drives up, and it's already driving up. It's heading south. And we lose key manufacturing contracts because our partner across the border distrusts us. We don't just lose this quarter, we lose a generation. Carney's attempt to shift gears is too little too late. Ford's theatrical war is too reckless. And the combination may render Canada a second-tier player rather than a middle power with strong bilateral ties. So, it's been a week, Canada. We need to wrap this up. Weekend wrap. That's what we call it. So I want to wrap this. Let's hope for a better week next week. Here's the bottom line. Mark Carney and his Liberal posse, in alliance with Doug Ford and his Ontario show machine, are steering Canada into Stephen King's fog, not leadership. They are sacrificing jobs daily. They are sacrificing reputation around the world, and they are sacrificing our alliance with the United States on the altar of ideological envy and grandstanding. The consequences are not looming, they are landing right now, as we speak. If you are a Canadian worried about your job, you should be. If you're worried about the cost of living, you should be. If you're worried about whether this country still has a place in the global economy, this should all frighten you because you're paying for it. The question now isn't from which sector the blow will come, it's just when. And what can you do? You can demand accountability. That's it. You feel powerless as a citizen right now, don't you? Biggest thing is demanding accountability. In these comments, sharing these videos, to going to your MPs, you can call out the stunt politics. You can insist that your government act like Canadians, not like globalist showrunners. Get involved. Speak up as best you can. Do as much as you can. Because if Canada doesn't stop being roadkill on this globalist highway, the rest of the world will simply drive right over us. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things, the weekend wrap. I'm thrilled you've been here all week. We'll be back, of course, with the first sip on Monday morning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, comment. Go Jays go tonight for game 2. And of course, we will see you on Monday morning. Have a great weekend, everybody.